Good evening, all. We can see people coming in from the lobby. So we'll just wait for you all to get in. We hope you're all inside, nice and warm, having a brew, having your tea. It's quite cold in Aberystwyth tonight, so it's quite nice to be indoors, really. There we go. I think most people are in now, so we'll start. This session tonight is being recorded, and we do that really so that the people that can come on will get the recording sent to them. So you'll also get it as well. Although you're on tonight, there'll be a recording. Will find its way to you tomorrow, and then you can watch it at your leisure. And you can also tell some friends. They'll be able to access them from the YouTube channel. So we're yet another webinar. So we're very fortunate. We've got Kate with us tonight, good friend of ours. Known Kate for many years in the industry, done lots of great things. And Chris Elkington from Gelston, going to give us his wisdom of how he and Louise and the family are developing their business. So we're really, really happy to have you all on board tonight. Those of you can see that there is a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. So if you have any questions, whatever they are, please type them in there. You won't be able to ask them directly, but just put them in there and we will make sure that we pick them up and we will ask both Kate and Chris. We'll probably ask them at the end of each session, but there'll be plenty of time at the end as well to go through them all. So we won't miss you. We will get to them. So there's no silly question. So please type away if you've got anything that you need to ask. So obviously the title for this evening really is breeding our own replacements, really, and the closing the flock and the impact that can have on us. And Kate's going to go first for us. She's going to give us really the sort of the industry view and the science and the best practice behind it all. And then we'll go over to Chris afterwards then to see what Chris and Louise are doing in Gelston. So without further ado, I think, Kate, we're going to pass over to you and we'll get this show on the road.
Yeah.
This is when everybody hold their breath for technology to work. It is coming up slowly, I think. There we go. Okay.
Yep.
It's not on presenter mode yet, but it's on its way.
Just trying. Press again. Okay, thank you, Dowie. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to speak, Dowie. That's very good of you. As some of you may not know me, I'm an independent sheep consultant. I've been doing that since 2014, just over 10 years now. And for a long time before that, I worked for ADAS. And some of you may well know me from that, period of my life. Anyway, I'm just going to just change something. So Dowie's asked me to talk about homegrown ewes and the path to a closed productive flock. I'm going to try very hard not to mention particular breeds because I know we all have our favourites, and forgive some of the photographs because they are of particular breeds, but I've tried to be fair across the board within here. So the point of moving to productive flock, a closed flock, sorry, is really to have much more control over the breeding sheep you've actually got. And I'll just give you an outline of what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk a little bit about your ideal sheep, what is a perfect sheep for you, thinking about keeping your own replacements and how you go about it, a little bit about ewe efficiency, health risks and how a closed flock can really help you reduce the health risks of purchasing replacements, talk a little bit about rams to breed replacements, and then a little bit about breeding and managing replacement ewe lambs. So what is your ideal ewe? I'm sure it's not this animal just looking in front of you, everybody. This looks a particularly odd looking sheep, but it was the best I could do in terms of finding a sort of cartoon sheep. So you probably have a different idea of what a perfect sheep is, many of you, but I've just put a few thoughts down on the page. Wool or no wool, that's quite a fashionable one these days. Lots more people moving into wool shedding breeds. But many of us sticking well and truly to wool breeds, but maybe trying to perhaps breed a bit of wool off the tails and off the bellies to make things cleaner. Perfect feet, that would be a dream, wouldn't it? That we had animals that really never ever got lame. That would be a real utopia, I think, if we had perfect feet. It would be nice to think that the ewes in our flocks reared more than 60% of their body weight in lambs every year. The perfect ewe would be 100% of her body weight, but maybe that's not what we're looking for in maternal breed. But we have a standard we want to reach, and many of us will have different targets within that sort of area. A medium mature weight, we know very heavy ewes have high maintenance requirements, and you can't stock as many on any particular area of land. So having a sort of medium mature weight would, I think, be the ideal for us, somewhere between 55 and 70 kilos would probably be most efficient. We don't want any ewes having prolapses if we can avoid it, and certainly mastitis does tend to be quite high in yearling ewes. And if we could have animals that are never show those sorts of symptoms, then that would be perfect too. Lambing without assistance, as many more of us now are lambing outdoors, we really want to leave our sheep to it to actually lamb themselves. So if we could be breeding our own replacements that did that all by themselves, we can reduce labour costs and make our lives a lot easier. A long productive life, that's something we'd like our ewes probably just to last that little bit longer, stay productive for longer. So is longevity something we can breed into our sheep too? Do we want all our ewes to have 2 fast-growing lambs every year? Some of you might not, depending on the breeds and where you are up or down the hill. But that may be a criteria some of you are looking for. And another one that's quite very important, I think. We want ewes to maintain their body condition. Large shift in body condition score through the year are not a good thing. And recent work with the Challenge Sheep project, the HDB project, has really shown that ewes that maintain their condition and are around body condition score 4, obviously more lowland type ewes, last longer in the flock and produce faster growing lambs. And I think we all knew that about body condition, but that would be something that would be quite a target to aim for. Never needs worming. That would be a dream too for, not that we're worming our ewes particularly often these days, but if we're thinking about the lambs, the offspring of those ewes, if we could move towards animals that didn't need as much worming, that would be a very beneficial thing in the future, given our status with regard to anthelmintic resistance. And disease-free, generally disease-free would be marvellous too. Obviously, we protect our sheep with vaccines, but there are other diseases that come in if we're purchasing animals, and if we can keep a closed flock and to keep disease out, that would be preferable to most people. So lots of criteria we could have in terms of choosing our ideal sheep. But one thing you can do, one thing you can't do probably is buy your ideal sheep necessarily, unless you've got a very good relationship with the person you're buying your replacements from at the moment and you're very happy with what you're getting. If you breed your own, though, you really can select the genetics you want to suit the system you're running. You can keep a healthy and productive flock, so much more control over disease and disease prevention. And I would say personally, from a sort of, I'm a clean breeder myself, but I think you have greater job satisfaction breeding your own replacements. It makes you keep better records, and obviously that does take time and relies on a decent EID recording system. But I think it is a route to improving flock performance and profitability. So if you can keep records of interval you'll use with a good EID system, that is the ultimate, I guess, but that's not going to fit for everybody. And maybe there are other ways of going about that than different systems of doing that to select your best ewes. But if you're selecting replacements, you need to do it from ewes that have lambed easily. So lambs not too small and not too large. So birth weight would be important here, and high lamb survival rate. You want ewes that are mothering their lambs well, so they've stayed with their lambs. They've not deserted them. They've had plenty of colostrum. They've given the lambs a good start in life. They've reared lambs well to 8 weeks, which in EBV terms is a measure of milking ability, and on to weaning. And depending on what your targets are, but reared so many kilograms of lamb per kilogram of ewe weight, were never lame, that would be great, and were deemed to be resistant or resilient to worms. So setting selection criteria, it's important probably to have an A and a B flock, and I think Chris will tell you about his A and B flocks later. So we want to select our replacements from the A flock. So we're breeding those to the criteria we've decided on. And if they don't meet the criteria consistently, we cull them or remove to the B flock and then cross the B flock with a terminal sire. Terminal sires are not bred for maternal traits, so it's important we're not using them extensively as breeding females. So they are bred for high lamb growth rate, fast finishing, and good carcass conformation, and they're not exactly in line with what we need in a maternal ewe, but obviously fine for finishing animals. So it will take you more time, need extra time for recording ewes, and it's really important to select rams for maternal traits to improve the females, so birth weight, lambing ease, maternal ability, etc. So do we think about crossbreeding or breeding pure? Breeding pure is obviously very simple, keeping your own replacements, and a lot of pedigree breeders would obviously be doing this. It's simple, it's only one breed. You've got the advantage of maybe being able to sell into purebred sales, pedigree sales. You have a greater uniformity of stock, but there is a danger of inbreeding when you're just keeping yourself purely into one breed. Crossbreeding, on the other hand, exploits the hybrid vigor. So you're all well aware of that bringing two breeds together, actually the combination of the two is better than either breed on its own. So we get some extra performance from crossbreeding animals. We actually have a much wider range of genetics to choose from. And I think we'd probably make faster rates of genetic change by using crossbreeding. Crossbreeding strategies, lots of these, and Innovis are a good example of how they've used crossbreeding strategies to develop their breed lines. First cross, that's utilising crossbred offspring produced by two purebred females, two purebred parents, sorry. A second cross might be mating a purebred ram to a first cross ewe, creating a lamb with genes from 3 breeds, so we've got even more hybrid vigor. Rotational crossing, which is favoured by quite a few breeders, alternating 2 different sire breeds in successive generations. So you're just alternating one breed 1 year and then the next breed the next year. Back crossing, if we wanted to bring in a desirable characteristic, something like polling or something else that was required, then you can actually grade up using the original breed. And then composite production, which is what the New Zealanders have done a fair bit of, and some of the Innovis breeds would come into that category, creating a crossbreed breeding line by crossing 2 or more breeds and keeping crossbred replacements from within that population. So we've got all sorts of potential crossbreeding strategies. So I want to look at ewe efficiency. What do we mean by ewe efficiency? I think what we're trying to do is pull out ewes from the flock or breed our replacements from ewes that are the most efficient. So is that an ability to rear 1 or 2 lambs on grass or forage alone? Is it a robust animal that's need little intervention and survives for 4 or 5 lambings in the chosen system? Is it limited use of veterinary medicines, apart from appropriate vaccines, of course? Is it low labour requirement? It may be different things to different people. So, I can't be sort of precise about that, but you have your own measures of ewe efficiency. One thing I just wanted to show you was a Farming Connect project I was involved with at Leon and Sean Jones near Lanroost a few years ago. And they actually had a flock of improved Welsh ewes, and we decided to look at the efficiency of those ewes. They chose 350 of the sheep they liked the look of, the type of sheep they wanted in their flock. They were smart animals, they looked good, and they were generally what Leon and Sean wanted their flock to look like going forward. And what we did, we identified their lambs at birth, and we followed them through to weaning. And then we worked out how many kilograms of lamb each ewe had produced per kilogram of her body weight. So the yellow dots represent the twin rearing ewes, and the blue dots represent the single rearing ewes. And not surprisingly, I put an arbitrary 60% of sort of 0.6 of a kilo of lamb produced per kilogram of ewe on the red line. And not surprisingly, the twins mostly come above that line. There's one or two twins fall below that line, and mostly below the line are the singles. But there are some exceptional singles going above the 60% line. Yeah, so a good spread, but most of the singles will be below the line. They were aiming at 60 kilogram ewes, and they did want more twins. So, and you can just see a little glow under some of the points. Can you see the glow under some of the yellow and the blue points? Those represent cases of mastitis or lameness, which help to explain why some of these ewes weren't performing particularly well in terms of kilograms of lamb reared. So we had arranged, when I actually looked at that in terms of figures to mean a bit more to you, the kilograms of lamb reared to weaning per ewe averaged 31.6 kilograms, but the range was 14 to 62, which is a pretty enormous range. So some ewes were rearing more than their body weight. So in terms of kilograms of lamb weaned per kilogram ewe mated, it was on average 56%, but it ranged from as poor as 20% to over 107%. So we had some ewes which were doing a very fine job, those mostly twin bearing ewes, and some ewes down at the bottom, literally only rearing 20 kilograms of lamb weaned per kilogram ewe mated. So very, very wide range. So what do I say to that? So what do we do? And what did I say to Sean and Leon? And my overriding advice was to take out the bottom animals. So if you're constantly taking out the bottom performing animals, the poorest performing animals, you're going to ultimately improve the flock. So if you systematically remove the poorest, then you'll eliminate those ewes that are losing money. And I suggest that ewe with literally rearing 20 kilos of lamb, get rid of her and create a more resilient and profitable core group. That is in addition to those involuntarily culled, so mastitis and prolapse, etc. So typical culling rate of 20 to 25% that most of us are used to may need to be higher initially to cull out the poor performers. And just picked out this little table from an SRUC publication, Rearing the Future Flock. And this was sort of possible culling decisions. So high priority might have been prolapse, poor feet, poor udders, poor teeth, and empty. Whereas some other particularly important ones might have been high mature weight, so heavy ewes, costing more in terms of maintenance requirements and feed requirement. Assisted at lambing, high body condition score loss, a poor temperament, and failing to rear twins. So those are just possible culling decisions, and you may yourselves have different ones. So just thinking about body condition, I think that's becoming more and more important. We're all well used to the condition scoring scheme of 1 to 5 and putting our hands across the loin of the ewe to feel for the sharpness of the bones. But and I think we're all well aware that, the fitter a ewe is, basically, generally she's going to do better. But I think new research coming out from the Challenge Sheep project is showing that almost the fitter the better in terms of ewes at topping time and maintaining condition and not making huge shift in body condition score through the production season. And if you can keep them at a steadier level of body condition score, we tend to get better lamb growth and greater longevity. And we all know that thin ewes tend to not milk so well, not produce strong lambs, tend to go down with disease more quickly than fitter ewes. So it all adds up to being all round better for ewes to be in good condition score. So the Challenge Sheep project was suggesting that we actually would be getting lowland type ewes would be in condition score 4 for much of the year and not dropping much more than 1 body condition score at any time. So body condition score could be a key factor when you're looking at selection. And if ewes are below a certain condition score at weaning, then that might be too low in terms of recovery to condition score 3.5, 4 by tupping, in which case those need to be culled. And I'm sure many of you will be doing that, but not worth the risk in terms of production and performance going forward. So one thing that we risk when we buy in any sheep is buying in disease. And the list is long, unfortunately. Mighty Vizsla apparently is somewhere over 10% of the national flock now. That used to be around 2 or 3%, but far more cases now. CLA, not as much of an issue, but it's another one you can buy in. OPA, ovine pulmonary adenocarcinoma or Yaxete, a nasty one to have. But many of these diseases, and Johne's too, Johne's is somewhere around, from recent studies, it's somewhere around about 65% of flocks have got Johne's infected animals. These diseases are generally called iceberg diseases. An iceberg seems, I'm slightly confused by the term that's used here. Iceberg to me means the tip of the iceberg, where we're seeing clinical disease above the surface of the water and lots of subclinical disease below the surface of the water. Now, a lot of these can be managed in our flocks in terms of body condition scoring again. So pulling out any thin ewes or any ewes that are below par early and culling them. And that will help to reduce the incidence of these diseases. But I think probably one of the most important things, if we close our flocks, we're reducing the risk of bringing in these diseases. And are making it an all-round healthier flock altogether. And of course, there's always the risk of resistant parasites coming from other farms. I mean, resistant parasites are pretty ubiquitous these days, and many farms have got resistance to anthelmintics, but we don't want to bring in resistance we haven't got. So worms and fluke, we know triclopendazole resistance. And we know there are sheep scab mites that are resistant to the injectable insecticides. So no resistance to OP dipping yet, but and that would be our most reliable thing to do if we have a scab outbreak. But all these things we could be buying in when we're bringing in any sheep, be that a ram or any ewes. So buying from reputable sources with good health status is really, really important when we're bringing in new sheep, and particularly into our closed flocks. So just to emphasize that, I thought I'd put this bright and sunny picture up because we've not actually got much of that at the moment, although today was a little bit better. But I just found this when I Googled biosecurity, and that little picture of these happy sheep in their very neat and tidy pens came up. And of course, biosecurity, once you have a closed flock, is hugely important. So maintaining field boundaries, if only we all had fences like that, it'd be amazing. There's always somebody potentially kind to put a stray sheep into your field. So maintaining field boundaries is really important, and maybe locking gates too. So I did say buying rams with estimated breeding values, but buying from trusted health assured sources. I mean, there are many members of the Premium Sheep and Goat Health Scheme with SIUC, but other people will be able to provide some guarantees of their health status. So I've just put in there a protocol for new rams arriving on the farm, something really a sort of a quarantine a schedule for anybody bringing any sheep onto the farm. So foot bathing off the lorry, inspecting all the feet, giving a wormer and 2 wormers and a treatment for sheep scab if that's a risk. Considering fluke risk, asking the vendor what's been the treatment on the previous farm. Holding sheep off grass, off any of your grass for 48 hours to clear them out of resistant worms, and keeping them separate for at least 3 to 4 weeks. Yeah, okay, I think that's really important to keep your animals safe. So choosing rams to breed replacement females. So we need to think about how we need to improve our ewe and lamb performance, and what do we need to look for in a ram. So the rams pass on maternal traits to their female offspring. And these traits are really important in a closed flock because we're looking for easier lambing, easier managed animals. So selecting a ram with higher litter size, EBV, will obviously increase the number of lambs produced by their female offspring, which is sometimes what we're looking for. It's not what everybody's looking for, but some of us will be. Maternal ability, that's something I think is vitally important. So that would be a really key one in selecting rams. Or we're looking for high index maternal rams to deliver many aspects of a maternal ewe. So buy from recorded flocks if at all possible, and really have a good chat to the breeder about what you need and what sort of ewe you've got, and then you choose the attributes that will improve your ewe and lamb performance. And I just picked this out of the Signet booklet called Buying a Recorded Ram for Maternal Traits, and it just gives you some idea if you're looking at individual EBVs. So litter size born, a ram with an EBV of plus 0.2 is estimated to produce ewes that produce 10% more lambs than a ram with an EBV of 0. So just explaining that. Litter size reared, a ram with an EBV of 0.4 is estimated to produce ewes that will rear 20% more lambs than a ram with an EBV of 0. So, something that some of us will be looking for. An indication of breeding potential maternal care, we're looking at a ram with an EBV, that's a maternal ability, would actually 1 kilo is estimated to produce ewes whose lambs are half a kilo heavier at 8 weeks than a ram with an EBV of 0. So we can pick out the individual EBVs that are important to us in terms of improving our females, and maybe looking at the overall index to get a complete suite of maternal EBVs to suit our flock. So I'm coming on now to managing replacements. The really important thing, if you're keeping your own replacements, is that ewe lambs should be treated almost like finishing animals. They need to keep growing and growing. They mustn't have any growth checks through their first season. And for a ewe lamb to go to the tup successfully at about 7 months of age, she needs to be 60 to 70% of her mature body weight by tupping. This is really critical. Body weight and puberty body weight's usually a good indicator of puberty. So a heavier ewe lamb will reach mature puberty earlier than a lighter lamb. But if you think about if you had a twin lamb born on the 1st of April, and let's say she was 4.5 kilos, and generally we'd probably be looking to select from twin lambs, not singles. 7 months old and topping on around about the 1st of November, she would need to be a minimum of 42 kilos, if that would be 60% of mature body weight. If she was 70% of mature body weight, she'd be 49 kilos if she was born into a breed of ewe that was 70 kilos at mature weight. So that is growing at more than 175 grams a day from birth to tupping. So no slow patches, and that would be over 200 grams if you got to the higher end of that scale to be 70% of mature body weight. So is keeping them growing really well, and something that might be really important if we had a season like we just had, with the drought and limited grass availability. Then to keep them growing, it would be necessary to feed them, and with some concentrates. So it's good to train ewe lambs to eat at a young age, so that if you have to feed them at any point through pregnancy, growth and pregnancy, then they're used to feeding. They don't take a month to get used to taking concentrates. So it would be worth, if you're taking this seriously, going about ewe lambs, and we had a horrible dry summer like the last one, it would be good to train them before you get into any particular sticky points in the year. So for a yearling lambing for the first time, it must be 56 kilos at tupping. But the important thing with managing the ewe lambs is if they do lamb, then they have to keep growing. So managing them to meet the 80% target is really important. And there are ways to actually help those ewe lambs make it. by either creep feeding or weaning early, giving ewe lambs preferential treatment through pregnancy and lactation. So just thinking about target growth rates for ewe lambs, weaning to mating, we need them to be growing at something like 200 to 250 grams a day. So that is like a finishing lamb. So we need them to be on good grazing throughout, maintaining that through mating and up to 6 weeks pre-lambing. We need to be going at about 130 grams a day. So through pregnancy, we're thinking of ewe lambs gaining about 12 to 15 kilos of weight. From 6 weeks pre-lambing to lambing, we need ewe lambs to slow down a little bit. We do not want to overfeed them. So we feed them for maintenance and just feed them as if they're a mature ewe of the same weight. So, and for how many lambs they're having. So we must only select those lambs that are over 60%. It's pointless putting ewe lambs that are underweight to the tup. They're likely not to take the tup very quickly. And, you know, potentially if they did get in lamb, they're going to be potentially stunted further by being in lamb. And select 25% more than you actually need because you need to allow for the empties. We don't expect all ewe lambs to get in lamb, and it actually allows you some further selection along the line, as you may want to select the ones that are go to the tup in the first cycle, particularly. So it allows you some flexibility to be more selective further down the line. Ideally, select an easy lambing mature ram, and if you've used a teaser, which I think would be generally what we would advise with ewe lambs to get them cycling, used for 14 to 17 days before the fertile rams are put in, something like 1 ram to 30 ewe lambs, and in small groups preferably. Critical not to overfeed in the last 6 weeks. This helps us to avoid oversized lambs and difficult lambings. We want to leave, just feed them as if they're having that 1 lamb. We want them to have 1 lamb, not 2, ideally, and just feed them basic requirements at that point. Large lambs, difficult lambings really do set a ewe lamb back and put her off her stride in terms of her mothering ability. So really important not to overdo them at that late stage. Ideally just rear 1 lamb, and depending on your system, you might want to creep feed the lambs or give the best grazing and forage, and wean at 8 to 10 weeks of age. So allow those lambs to recover condition and keep growing. Really important that they have plenty of time to keep growing. And we know that ewes generally are mature now. We've sort of looking at information that we've seen through the Challenge Sheep project, but ewes still are growing up to about 4 years of age. So it's really important that we look after these young animals and don't stunt them in their first breeding season, and give them good rest to regain condition and keep growing up to shearling age. So yeah, ewes continue to grow until about 4 years old. So we didn't used to think that. We thought it was about 3, but recent data has suggested that they're still gaining in body size until about 4. So I think that is where I want to stop, everybody. I hope I've not gone on for too long, but given you an outline of moving to a closed flock and what benefits that can bring you, and some of the things you really need to take care of to make it work for you. Thank you, Dowie.
Thank you, Kate. That's really, really good. A lot of information there for people to absorb. So hopefully people have kept up with it. Some really useful data there, Kate, in terms of, I think a lot of people will hone in on that 60% of body weight, but making sure that, putting that in real terms, or that 42 kilo for a 70 kilo mature weight, and getting those yearlings up to 56 kilos, really, really important stuff that people can focus on, isn't it? So,
yeah.
There is one question here that we'll just ask now before we move on to Chris, and then I'm sure we'll come back after. So we've got an anonymous attendee, but he or she, they're running sheep on a heather hill, so quite a hard hill by the looks of it. Asking really, should ewes be culled on the first if they're empty? or should they be given a second chance based on that hill environment? And also, what do you think the percentage of that empty rate is due to genetics and environment? So, in other words, two questions really. If you get barren ewes on a heather hill, on a hard hill, how much of it is genetics? How much of it is actually environment? And also, should they be given a second chance?
Tricky one. I think
Yeah.
that's one you have to make your own decision on, I think, Dowie. If you really have given them the toughest conditions, then you may want to give them another chance, and you've got plenty of land. That would be the important thing. If you've got plenty of space, and you can keep them, then maybe, and their genetics are particularly good. But running a ewe all year depends on what your inputs are into that animal. Is it really worth keeping her for another year, depending on her age? I'm not talking about a ewe lamb here. I'm talking about a yearling, obviously in a hill environment. But yeah, uh, yeah, I think it's one of those things you've got to make your own decision on what is acceptable in your system, really. If that ewe is running around empty, taking space for another more productive sheep, then I would have got rid of her. But it depends on what space you've got, what sort of system you're running, I would say.
Yeah, and absolutely, Kate. I think there is no straightforward answer to it. It depends on the hill. Obviously, where the tupping's happening, isn't it? Are they having to walk lots? Is there enough ramp power getting to those sheep?
Yeah,
Generally speaking, because we're in the world of going into a world of carbon, aren't we, in terms of carbon footprinting, generally having a mature ewe that isn't rearing a lamb is going to be bad news from a carbon auditing point of view. So,
absolutely.
and unfortunately, that's the sort of world we're heading into.
It
But they're
is.
not always easy to find, are they? Because, scanning time when they're gathered, probably about the first time you do get them. If people aren't scanning, because a lot of people may not be still on those systems, then it's easier to miss them. And obviously, the others that are quite easy to miss in that environment is the wet dries. They've scanned in lamb, haven't they? But they're actually not rearing a lamb.
Yeah.
And they're another real difficult one to actually pull out of the system. But
Mm.
I'm
Yeah.
with you, Kate. Personally, they wouldn't be getting a second chance with us,
No, I
generally
don't think
speaking.
so.
But
Yeah.
obviously, everybody's different. And I suppose that what is quite important is people being aware of what's happening at tipping time. We have lots of rams that go out to farms, and most of our customers are really switched on. Rams are chasing ewes are holding. There's not too many repeats coming into the second cycle. And that's good management. But unfortunately, sometimes we do get, a phone call this time of year saying, "Oh, I put a ram out with 70 ewes and I haven't got a single lamb, they've all scanned empty." And we're thinking, dear God, you know, now's not the time to realize that,
No.
especially in those hill environments, because ticks are a real problem these days. And, tick bite for a naive animal and
Yeah.
fertility gets hit for a period, and
Mm.
obviously we try and work with everybody to put that right. But I would really emphasize, seeing what's going on at upping time is really important. If they're running a big open hill, not so easy, but you can
Yeah.
still, see if rams are chasing and that sheep are
Yeah.
doing what they're supposed to do, I suppose. So,
It's been working. Yeah.
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 We have had a few more questions coming in, so bear with us, Chris. We'll just deal with them as we go, really. Um, that Janet has put an answer here in terms of, because Janet's on the call with us tonight, so it's always good having our
Yeah. Yeah. Good.
friendly in-house geneticist at hand,
Good.
isn't it, really? In terms of answer, how much of it is genetic or not?
Sorry. Careful.
Janet's view would be probably not genetic because it's probably the environment limiting them rather than the genetics themselves. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's other stuff that's happening. And we know that, heritabilities of certain traits, like number of lambs reared, for example, the amount genetics plays in that quite often is somewhere between 5 and 10%.
Yes. Not
So
much.
90% of it is other stuff that's happening
Yeah.
around it, isn't it, Kate? So it's
Yeah.
quite
Yeah.
difficult sometimes, with
Yes,
that
it is.
one.
Yeah.
Um, so just another couple of questions, and we'll come to you, Chris. Uh, Ewes rearing triplets. Have you seen ewes rearing triplets performing similar to singles? Or is there an issue with the ewes struggling to raise? So I'm assuming they're ewes that have had the three lambs left on them. Um, have you had experience, Kate, of those then actually struggling to perform, get back in lamb,
Yes.
or not?
Yeah. I would say unless they're looked after with kid gloves, those ewes, they would struggle to get back in lamb and regain the condition that they need to go back to the tup successfully in the autumn. So it's a big ask of any ewe. It's a big ask to rear twins, never mind rear triplets. You are asking for trouble unless you are really looking after that ewe incredibly well. There's not that many ewes around, I don't think, that can rear triplets successfully and rear them as well as any twin. She's an exceptional girl if she can do that. And I would say those ewes on many farms would need plenty of concentrates post lambing. And maybe lambs creep fed too. It's a big ask of any animal, I think. I mean, if you think about it, a twin bearing ewe in lactation needs over 30 megajoules of energy, and that's almost a struggle on grass. Depends what the grass is like, but they can do it on grass. But asking them to do another sort of 35 megajoules, at least another 5 megajoules or 8 megajoules, actually, we need another 8 maybe, to do that on grass alone is really asking too much, I think. So yeah, I would say it's tricky.
Yeah, and we've got really good examples of customers out there where, by far the most cost-effective one is if you've got a market for pet lambs, Kate lambs, getting that third lamb off and some people getting 20 quid, 30 quid for it. That's good news, isn't it? Because that's paid for the extra nutrition and the twins that are left on the ewe are that much better off.
Yeah.
We have got some customers that are doing a really good job putting those triplet bearing ewes, leaving lambs on them, but they're putting them on some really nice lays with chicory plantain.
Right.
As Kate said, really, really being kind to them and weaning early and putting that creep feeder in if needs be.
Yeah. That's the way to do it, I think, Dowie. Absolutely. You've got to be generous to the lambs and to the ewes. Yeah.
Yeah. And in terms of challenge sheep, I'm not quite sure what the outcome was in terms of lifetime performance. Again, I think if sheep are looked after pretty well in those circumstances and we get them back into good condition, it's a really interesting finding, and I think that's something we've been finding as well, Janet and the team, that if we can keep these ewes in that really good condition all the way through the year, and most of the recording systems now are monitoring condition score, and there's a condition score EBV, and that's becoming more and more important, especially on grass-based systems. So these ewes' ability to just hold their flesh, hold their condition through the year, not do the yo-yo of going lean and then having to get them back up. It seems to be the sort of the one that gives us the best performances, doesn't it, across breeds, really? So.
Well, we know, don't we, if ewes are in poor condition, in lactation, then that's when the eggs are developing in the ovary. And then if we have poor nutrition at that point, we're not going to get as many eggs ovulated come the autumn because she never, can't regain the condition well enough. So we're impacting on ovulation as well by not having these big shifts in body condition score.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Sorry, the questions are still piling in, so just keep going for a minute if that's okay. We've got somebody struggling with fertility in their flock. So they're asking, Kate, would you prioritize choosing a ewe lamb for size or born as a twin? So in other words, would you select your ewe lamb to go to the tup really based on, or to replace as replacements based on her size, or the fact that she's from a twin? Bearing in mind this flock is struggling with fertility.
Right, so we're not getting that many twins probably at the moment. So I mean, maybe like Janet said, a lot of fertility, the sort of how many lambs reared is down to the environment as much, and only, like you said, Dowie, 5 to 10% is genetic. So I think in that situation, probably I would try to select from twins, but I would have to go for singles and go for not necessarily the biggest, boldest singles because they are, that they have probably, well, no, let me rethink that. No, I think if you keep selecting very big animals, you're going to get bigger and bigger ewes. So not just necessarily going for the biggest, strongest singles. So, but selecting maybe on the performance of the ewe and how good she was in terms of mother and other things about the animal other than just growth rate.
Yeah. So in an ideal world, I think, Kate, what you're saying there is, you choose the well-grown twins if you got them, wouldn't you? Yeah. And we do know, historically people, again, the old rule of thumb used to be, people would have sold their bigger ewe lambs, kept the small ones back. But again, I think we've seen with lots of projects of the years that that animal's ability to grow early to get to that weight, to some degree, irrespective of how she's been reared, nearly, will give her that lifetime performance in terms of how she's sort of geared going forward. So I think, yeah, keep the best ewe lambs always for yourself and then sell the rest is the gist, I think,
Yeah,
generally with
yeah,
that. And if you
yeah,
can do it from twins, then
yeah,
so much the better.
yeah,
So I think growth size, bearing in mind if you've got performance recorded stock, you've also got a mature weight EBV to look at. And that's the beauty when you're looking at recorded cleans or Dorsets or recliners or Innovis stock, is that not only have you actually got those ewe lambs to look at, but you've also got a mature weight, which is telling you really how heavy they're going to be.
yeah.
So that gives you a little bit of confidence that you're not going just for those big growthy sheep that are going to be just huge.
Huge.
Obviously,
Yeah,
that's not what we want. We know that
yeah,
70 kilos, anything above that, really, it's going away from that sweet spot, really, isn't it? So,
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
um, another one for Kate. God, they're all coming in, Kate, today. So,
Good.
Kate, what are your thoughts on culling MTU lambs, especially if they haven't cycled? And maybe the upper weight limit of the group of lambs that may be smaller, that have been raddled. So, in other words, I think the question there is, um, you've got your lambs up to a weight.
Yeah.
You put them to the ram, but there's a proportion that just haven't held. Would you keep or cull, Kate?
I would, well, it depends on the lamb price, I would say. If the lamb price is so good, you might just want to sell them, and that's what
Yeah,
lots of people did when the lamb price was so good in previous
yeah,
years. Um, uh, and it depends on your, your grazing area, what you've got available in terms of food supplies and reserves. Um, and if you like that ewe lamb, but why didn't she get in lamb? Was there a good reason for her not getting in lamb? We want those fertile, prolific ewes, the ones that actually do get in lamb first time round. So it's a bit of it depends on how many you needed, I guess. But my inclination would be probably to sell them because they haven't actually reached your target in this year. You could sell them
yeah.
to somebody else who maybe run them round as yearlings, and you could run them as yearlings yourself. But I think if you're trying to get a prolific and more fertile flock, I'd probably sell them.
Yeah, and I think again, Kate, we agree that generally speaking, these real high-end flocks, they're actually putting ewe lambs to lamb, they're keeping them, they're actually breeding from them, they're getting those ewes, then coming that first cycle, or
Yeah,
quite often operating a beam mob that's going into terminals, which
yeah,
which Chris is going to talk about shortly, I think. So,
yeah,
having that ability to, use the very best genetics all the time, isn't it? So
exactly.
last question for Kate before we move on to Chris, otherwise poor Chris will be um, needing a
Nodding
brew.
off.
Um, is it worth putting ewe lambs on less favoured grazing, Kate, and then selecting them as yearlings that have done the best from it? So, in other words, I think what we're saying there is that if they're not being tupped, is it a good idea to put them on a less favoured area, poorer grazing, and then using it as selection pressure, if you like, and then choose the yearlings that have done the best from that as your replacements into the flock?
Well, certainly they don't need to grow anywhere near as fast if they're going to run round as yearlings. They can actually be put on poorer grazing than they would if they were going to be lambed as ewe lambs. So a very different system. And I guess those that have done the best, I mean, we have to keep thinking about those that grow the fastest. But if they've done well on poor grazing, that probably is what you want, to be honest. You're not having to put too much inputs. What the ideal sheep is one that eats less and grows fastest, isn't it? And certainly, if we're having to provide less high quality food for an animal, then that is a good thing going forward. So
Yeah,
I think probably that's my view.
yeah,
Yeah, you could put them on poorer grazing. They still want to be growing. That's the important thing. Don't want to be standing still, because they are, and they're actually losing. They're getting stunted if they're not actually growing. So you must be growing them well over 50 grams a day, well over. But they don't need to be racing along at 130, up to 200 grams a day. So they
yeah.
can be done on poorer grazing, absolutely. And I've known quite a lot of farmers who've bought ewe lambs in, run them round, and they've just made do on what there was rather than had to go on to anything particularly good. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that is absolutely a good way to do it.
Yeah, and that's consistent, I think, with the first webinar we had this year with Hamish when he was talking about our nucleus, where we will carry about 500 ewe lambs into the winter. They'll go on forage crops, they'll go onto some permanent pasture, they'll be behind fences under pressure, and gradually through the winter they'll get weeded down probably to about 420, 430 by the next year as yearlings. And really, that ability to actually, we don't send them off the farm, they're effectively grown on the farm and being acclimatized to that farm in Southfield. And that gives us that ability, I think, to really hone in on the sheep that can perform, certainly from a body condition point of view.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
that's probably a very good time to hand over to Chris, because Chris has been fighting with getting ewe lambs and yearling ewes and stuff performing for a few years. And I think this year, from all accounts, it looks as if he's got it right. So probably a good time, Chris, to talk happily about your scanning results and your farming system. So we're going to go over to Chris, if that's okay. We'll be back to you, Kate, I'm sure, shortly.
Thanks.
Oh, you're muted, Chris, I think. Hold on. There you, there you
That
go.
better?
We
Can you
can
hear
hear you.
me?
Yeah, we're good.
Right. For those who don't know me, I'm Chris from Gelston Lamb. I farm in partnership with my wife here in Lincolnshire. We run around 500 ewes. We don't tup our ewe lambs. And every lamb that we produce on the farm goes through our butchery. Which is then sold on as cuts of different lamb, etc., at various outlets, pubs, restaurants, general public, on-farm pop-up shops, and things like that, farmers markets, cooking events. The list is endless, really, as long as we sell it. Um, we we have started using all our culls as well through the butchery, so we don't sell any culls either. Everything, we have quite a high demand for mutton, and everything goes through there as well. So we're sort of utilising everything on farm. As for the sheep, we sort of are split really as an A and B flock, as Dowie said. The A flock obviously is where we breeding all our own replacements from. The B flock is anything that's not particularly doing what it should be doing, and it goes back to a terminal sire, and then obviously produces our fat lambs. We'll keep all our own replacements. We're a closed flock. We have been for quite some number of years now. We decided on that really just because of the disease thing. We needed to be sort of more in control of where we were going and everything else like that. That's why we did it. It's not been plain sailing by any means. What I would say is it's a long job, really, and as we're not by any means, we're not perfect. We've made lots of mistakes and we've done a lot of learning along the way. I would like to think we're getting there now with what we've learned over the years. This scanning, we've scanned at sort of the A flock scanned at 187, the B flock scanned at 185, which for us is about perfect, really, where we want to be. We're lambing everything outside this time. We did used to split it where I used to lamb the B flock inside, sort of early March, and then the A flock would be outside in April. But with everything we've got going on, it just felt like we were lambing for far too long, really. So this year is the first year we decided to lamb everything together, and they'll be all outside March the 20th. So we'll see how we go with that. We'll just have to keep because of our job. We're running hogs, for a long time. We'll still have hogs, on the farm in June. because obviously we need them for the butchery. So we'll just have to keep probably a few more hogs back for a bit longer until we get some of the next crop of lambs ready. We'll see how it goes. We have been creep feeding some sort of lambs if we needed to. Sort of the B flock would get creep fed to try and get some lambs in the butchery as soon as we can. So we'll probably end up doing that again, I would think, just to try and get some lambs finished quickly. We're
Chris,
quite.
we've got a picture up there of some very dry conditions. Is that you in the summertime?
Yeah, I can't see the pictures, but for some reason, yes, we're extremely dry here in sort of east of England, if you like. In the summer, this summer particularly was pretty horrendous, really, and we just parched up to nothing, and it was very challenging. You know, we'd fed half of our silage by in August, you know, to use just to keep them going. So that is difficult. It does seem to be more like it the years, you know, the weather sort of patterns that we're having. We're getting sort of longer periods of dry weather, and then the winters are wet. So yeah, it is difficult. I would say it's checked lambs this time as well. Not so much the indoor lot because they were getting fed, but the outdoor lot I think has certainly been checked. The lambs aren't as good as they were in previous times, just because of the dry weather.
And Chris,
So
how
that
did you cope? How did you cope with tupping with that? Because in that picture you've got there behind a wire, there ain't a lot of grass. Did you have to supplement or not?
we did this time. Yeah, we worked closely with Neris, and we sort of came to the decision that we thought the indoor lot would probably be all right, just because the lambs are being creep fed and the ewes were in better condition. They'd had an earlier bite, whereas the outdoor lot but they'd struggled quite a lot, and we decided that we would feed them with a bit of concentrate pre-tupping this time, which was the first time we've done it really, and I think actually it's paid dividends because it just topped them up and it put some condition on before the tups went in. And well, I think the scanning probably shows it really. I think we'd have probably been in trouble if we hadn't done that.
And what did you give them, Chris? Just a roll or something or not?
We snacked them. I actually just snacked them some rolled barley. It was a 16%, sort of feed with rolled barley and bits and bobs. And I just snacked them every day. It was a bit of a pain, but I think it paid off. So yeah, we just snacked them every day. And then just kept them right, and they were tucked on grass.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So that was that. I mean, the scanning wise, I think we're still a bit low on twinning rate. I'd like a bit higher. We were 57% and 59% twinning rates. You know, I'd like to get it up a bit more if we can. Barren rate was good. The A flock were 1.1%, and the B flock were 2.6% barren rate. So you know, I was happy with that. Really, that was good.
And Chris,
The
we moved on
shearling,
picture-wise. We've got a very nice blue merle dog with some stubbos there. I'm assuming this time of year now you're moving on to cover crops or not?
yeah. So from late October, really, we're onto stubble turnips, forage rape, with everything. So everything's off farm. Realistically, I mean, this year everything was off farm by sort of early September. We're lucky enough to get on some sort of hay aftermaths that we have on different farms, and then they move on to the turnips that we grow on local arable farms, and they'll stay on turnips then or rape for all the winter, and we'll bring them back closer to home onto some other hay aftermaths, sort of March time, early March, and then sort of 2 weeks before they look like they're going to start lambing, we'll bring them home. That's normally the plan anyway. But yeah, we drill all our own cover crops, turnips on local arable farms.
And what do you
You
pay
know,
for
which
that?
is a massive.
Do you get access to the land and you put the crop in, or how does that work with you?
Yeah, we've got a good deal really with the farmer that we deal with. We get the land for free, and we do all the drilling. Supply the seed and do all the drilling. So that's our deal that we have. He's keen to have stock on the farm. It's all heathland, all limestone brash. He's keen to have stock on in the winter. They're doing it a lot of good, really, putting a lot of manure back in, aren't they? And yeah, it seems to work really well for us.
And how many acres would you take, Chris?
Believe it. This time we're about 150 acres. It's always a bit of a gamble because you just never know what the weather's going to do. But yeah, normally 150 acres is about right for us. We could probably done with a little bit more this time. As we sort of grow and we're getting bigger and bigger, and we're using more and more lambs in the butchery. That's the biggest pain with it all is finding a home for hogs, sort of March time through till sort of after lambing. That's the pain. I don't really want them at home while we're lambing and eating grass that the ewes want to be eating.
Sure. And in terms of fencing and stuff, Chris, and water, how do you deal with infrastructure? Because we put a picture up there now of a trailer behind a pickup, and you're obviously moving fences with that. Are you on some routes?
Yes, yeah. We do everything behind the pickup with the wrapper trailer and the winding gear.
Okay.
We've done okay. I think it's probably something that we'll look at. We'll probably look to put it on the bike. That's one of my projects that I need to do. But yeah, we do it. Everything's behind electric in the winter. We're moving all the time, really. Sort of we try to make it as easy as we can in the winter. Sort of weekly moves, maybe. Probably if they'll last a bit longer, then we'll do them 2-week moves. When they're at home in the summer, we're rotationally grazing. We're moving every 3 days. Once we've finished lambing, we sort of block the fields up, and then we move every 3 days. We found that to work really well, really, with grass, especially dry time. It just gives you a little bit of a break, and the sheep do better on it. We've found we've tried it not doing it, and we've tried it obviously doing it, and we've had better results with rotational grazing than not.
And Chris, how do you deal with trace elements and minerals and stuff? Do you supplement with it or not?
Yeah, we do. We've just this year actually we're very low in iodine in our part of the world. It's been quite an issue for us, really. We were low in iodine in one year, and it hampers you really at lambing. It's not a pleasant experience. So then we corrected it with sort of blood tests, found out what it was. Then we corrected it with a drench and bolus. But this time again, I don't know whether it's because of the dry time or something. We struggled with it again at lambing last time. It sort of reared ugly head again. We thought we'd about cracked it, but yeah, we hadn't. It came back when they were low again in our. So we've gone to bolusing twice a year now. So we'll bolus pre-tupping, and we bolus again pre-lambing, and I'm hoping that'll sort them out with that.
So Chris, we moved on to some sheep on permanent pasture lambing by the looks of it, and they look nice twins with the ewe. When do you move on to lambing fields then, and where do you do that?
Yeah, so they'll come back home. We sort of try and get them at about 5 to the acre. They'll come back home really, basically when we run out of places for them to go. But sort of, if the weather will allow us, it's so wet. We go from one extreme to the other. Seem to be here. Our farm's undrained, and once it is wet, it's very wet. So it's just I'm trying to keep them off, but we'll look to bring them back sort of 3 weeks before they start lambing, and then we'll get them in the set stocks in the fields and go from there. We have supplemented with sugar beet in the past if we needed to, but we've sort of changed a bit how we've done everything. We apply some chicken muck in September when everything's off the farm, and it just gives us a good bite of grass to go onto at lambing. especially this time. And we've got a good bite in front of us, so I think we'll probably be without the sugar beet this time. So yeah, that's it. That's all set, stocked, and then away we go.
Chris, we're getting a couple of questions in here on the trace elements, so we might as well ask them now. Asking how do you test for your trace elements? How do you do the testing for that?
Yeah, we did the blood tests really. We knew we'd got something wrong with the sheep, so we just did blood tests, and we tested for everything, all the normal stuff, but it came back as iodine, low iodine. So yeah, that's what we did.
Right. So it's blood testing you're doing. You're not doing any liver biopsies or anything. It's just through blood, yeah?
No, it's just through blood tests. Yeah,
Okay, cool.
yeah.
And then somebody's asking how long pre-lambing do bolus they use? And have you given
Sorry, you
iodine
broke up.
injection as well or not?
About No, we haven't done the iodine injection. It's a drench. We use a drench where we just mix it up ourselves to
Yeah.
try and correct it, and then we'll bolus them sort of 5 weeks before lambing.
Okay. Chris, we've got a picture up of a couple of lambs in a pen with a ewe. Do you mother up in pens or anything like that, or is it sheep that you've just put in there?
That'll just be a ewe that we've had. We would have done inside, but outside we tend not to. We'll just try and leave them alone as much as we can. We do. We're different, I guess. We do try and record as much information as we can at birth. We'll pre-number the ewes before they start lambing and get them on the reader with their numbers, and then we can assign it the lambs to that ewe. So we're tagged at birth, and then we can monitor them throughout their life. Pretty much wait really. So then we can make management decisions on that ewe, going by our lambs really, and how well she's reared them and everything else. So we can make culling decisions at the end of the season.
Cool. Okay. Chris, you put some beautiful rams up on the screen there. There's a maternal and a terminal. I think it's an SR and an Aber Black, is it, or Highland? I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah.
Can you just tell us how you've been mix matching the flock in terms, because you obviously, you're not betrothed to Innovis genetics as such. You've been using lots of different breeds over the years and stuff, but just talk us through your journey with the breed mix and stuff.
Yeah, we've struggled with scanner percentage for a while, really, and that's why we've sort of mixed and matched a bit to try and see if we can alter it. Aberfield SRs, we've used for quite some time. We do put a Highlander in occasionally. We have done in the past to try and get the percentage up a bit, but I think we're about. Well, I don't want to say too much, but I think we're getting there with it now. We'll probably won't use the Highlanders quite so much. I think we'll keep on with the Aberfield or the Aberfield SRs, and just try and keep at that 180% wise now. But yeah, the Aber Blacks, we've had them for a couple of years now, I think, for the terminal side of things with the butcher's lambs. Which they're a good thing. They're nice carcasses, and that's what we really ideally want in the butchery. You want a nice carcass lamb that's going to sell well with all your cuts.
Yeah, cool. And I suppose that's a good time really to move on to Gelston Lamb and your business really. Talk us a little bit about how this has evolved, because I've had the pleasure of tasting your lamb burger in an event the other day, and it was really, really good. So tell us about how you're doing all of this. I know you put heart and soul into it. So
yeah, it's been a sort of it's been a hard going really, and we've sort of finally started to see some sort of fruition, and we've started with very little sheep. We started with 5 ewes, and we built it up from there, and selling lamb boxes and things like that. And we got out cooking, doing sort of making everything into burgers, and then going around different shows and cooking at local shows and things like that. To where we are now, really, we're we employ sort of 3 or 4 people in the butchery. We're in there every week, selling, basically doing anything that we need to do to sell the lamb, and then we have a pop-up on the farm, which is very popular. We get a lot of people coming where we're selling quite a lot of stuff, really. I guess we're not just selling lamb anymore. We've had to people have wanted beef and want pork and everything else, and we're sort of now selling sort of everything, sourcing everything locally and selling it through the butchery. So it's sort of evolved. We're pretty much, like any other butcher shop really now. But obviously selling all our own lamb plus other local produce, beef and pork
And
wise.
Chris, how often do you do the pop-up at home then? Because this is at home, is it, where the pop-up is in the sort of the flat roof shed? Is that at home with you?
Yeah, we do that once a month at home. Then we have another one at a garden centre, a local garden centre that we do once a month. We do a farmers market once a month. So we're out sort of 3 weekends in the month at various different pop-ups, and then we start cooking sort of April onwards, and we'll be out. We're out quite a lot with the catering trailer. Which is how we started. Firstly was through cooking at events and getting your name out there.
So how do you guys work with this? Because you've got a really good eye for presentation in terms of how you put things together. We've put the last slide up now, which is those meat cuts you've got with your brand. You've also got your website, your Facebook, Instagram accounts and stuff. It's really professionally put together. So who does all of that? Do you do it all between you or not?
It's not me who does that, funnily enough. It's my wife, Louise, does all that side of things. Yeah, it's nearly a full-time job, pushing it all the time. You can't afford to slip out of the limelight as such. You've always got to be on people's news feeds and everything else like that. And you've got to push it all the time. Otherwise, we have got a lot of loyal customers now, but certainly in the beginning, it was you had to push all the time. And it's the same with social media, really. Now, I think you'll soon drop out of sight with it all if you're not posting regularly enough. And a lot of our customers, they like to see going on. They want to see what you're doing and how you're doing it, and I think they're generally interested in what you're doing. And obviously it helps sell the meat.
And Chris, in terms of how did this all start? What was the sort of light bulb moment that you said, God, we're going to start selling direct to customers?
It was really COVID that pushed us to that point where we started, because as I said before, we'd started with the cooking events, and then COVID had hit, and all our cooking events had got cancelled and scrapped, and then we sort of I panicked. I started to panic a bit. We just put the butchery in, really with the intention of just making burgers for the catering side of things. Then we thought, what we're going to do, and we all said, well, let's have a go at see if we can sell some lamb boxes to people, and that's what we did, really. And it's gone from strength to strength, really, from there on. Really, COVID was it was pretty bad, but it was the thing that made us, really, was COVID. And people panicked, didn't they? And they panicked, bought stuff, and it made us, and we haven't looked back ever since. You've sort of evolved going forward, and we've tried different things all the time, and the pop-up shop evolved, and it came about, and now we're flat out with it, really. And truthfully, it's hard work. It's all weekends and everything else, but it's always been done to keep me farming, really. All I've ever wanted to do was farm, and we've had to just find a way how you can make sort of 110 acres and 500 ewes pay and direct selling was how we've done it really. And now we're sort of
I think it's a
employing people.
phenomenal success and a really heartwarming example to people. Yeah, hats off to you, really.
Yeah, I
You're
think
doing a great job and for yourselves and for the industry. It's really good. It's curious in terms of other people out there thinking, about doing this, because, there's lots of people that have ideas of diversification and stuff, but I know the amount of work that you guys are putting into it. It is what would you give as advice to people? Would you encourage people to go down this route or not?
um I think I would. I would. It's certainly not for the faint-hearted. Um, it's extremely full on, and like I said before, you've just got to be on it all the time, and it is hard work. There are sacrifices you have to make. It is all weekend work, most of it. People are working in the week, and they want to come and buy stuff on a Saturday. So you've got to be out there selling it on a Saturday. Um,
How many people do
it's
you
hard
employ?
work, but yeah.
How many people do you
Sorry,
employ?
say again.
You can't, you just
We're,
can't do
we
it yourselves, you two, surely. How
no,
many
no,
people do you
we
employ?
employ two full-time butchers, and then we have a couple of ladies that help us out packing and things like that. We have a sort of a weekend lad that helps us on the trailer, things like
Okay,
that. So probably part-time staff and me and Louise, I think we're at about 7 people altogether.
right, okay. And the
But yeah,
children and the
you can't
girls,
do it on your own.
your girls as
And the
well.
girls, yeah, they get dragged along. Bless
I bet
them.
they do.
Sometimes not overly willing, but
I can
they
imagine.
generally like it. Lambing's their favourite time of year. They love lambing,
Good.
but yeah,
You're going to
yeah,
be
they're
very
great.
useful in the
It's nice to
future.
have them involved.
Yeah.
Hopefully, yes, this is it.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. I can't wait. Hopefully.
It's very impressive, Chris, anyway. It looks amazing. Feel like
Thank
going
you.
over to
That's
buy
good.
some lamb, do you, Darry?
It's really made me want to have some chops, to be honest with you.
Absolutely.
And normally this time of year I don't touch lamb, but your presentation is so good, it does make
It
it
is,
quite happy.
absolutely.
Well, there you
Wonderful.
are.
Yeah. Chris, we've got just a couple of sheep related questions coming back in. So pulling it back to the farming side, I suppose, just to finish off. We've got Cormac on here, who's always on these calls, and nice to hear from him. Saying he's just got maternals in terms of his flock. He's asking, how do the terminal sires, the meat rams, impact your intervention in general? So in other words, if you look at our industry in general, where people, and Kate mentioned it before, to try and avoid putting terminal sires into maternal lines, because as an industry, I think that the Europe grid has created that problem for us over the years, where people have done that to try and get those big-bodied ewes, but actually also brought in the problems that quite often comes with it. But Cormac there, because he's on maternal, he's asking, do the terminals cause you a lot more work or not?
No, no, generally not. We treat them all the same. And then, yeah, generally they're fine. They finish quicker, But lambing wise, we don't have any problems with them really. No, but last year, we lambed them inside, so we fed them, but we sort of analysed the side, to constantly, fed them, and yeah, we didn't have to pull money at all, really. No problems at all. Different with us being outside. We won't concentrate feed. They'll be treated the same as the outdoor were, so they'll just turnips and then they'll be onto the grass rotations for lambing. And the only thing we'll say is any singles will. Well, that's our job tomorrow. Actually, we're pulling singles off tomorrow,
Okay.
and they'll go on to grass just so we can keep lamb size down a little bit.
Yeah, okay.
Mm.
So you do quite a lot of management like that, don't you? Intervention that avoid those problems. And I think, that's, we talk about conditioning, Scott, we know ourselves that we do everything we can to get those ewes into the lambing field. In that condition, Scott, 3.5. And if we can do that, kind of all the problems go away. And I think that's something, because when people are in sheds, you're used to the rations, TMR, concentrator, whatever they are. it's easier in many ways, to get it right when you've got a forage-based system. It takes a bit of doing, but when you get it right, it is very good because you'd never go back then, would you?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah. Even when we have been lambing inside, just really for the butchery side of things, why we've done it. And I was always relieved when it was finished and I could go lambing outside. Once you got it right, I think there's nothing better actually, really.
Yeah, yeah. Chris, there's a question here. Daniel over in Lincolnshire, who runs Texels, and saying there that what drench do you use? Because he's obviously getting problems with iodine, and he always seems to fall short based on putting it into his Texels, and he has to inject. So I think he's asking what iodine drench do you use? Do you remember?
We basically buy iodine. We got it from the vets. It's a granular iodine that you just mix with water and then
It'll be potassium
drench
iodide.
like that.
Potassium
That's what
iodide,
we've
isn't it,
used.
Chris? I'd imagine.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's it. Yeah, yeah.
Because if I'm right in thinking, Kate, you can just actually pour it onto the skin as well, can't you? I think you can get absorption reasonably well then as well.
Yeah, not so well with sheep with their fleece, but
Okay, yeah.
cattle we do it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I've got a few
No.
farmers who are drenching with potassium iodide to correct their iodine status. So it can work, absolutely.
And Kate, a question for you here. Well, Chris, really. Somebody has a low output flock, so again, I'm suspecting towards hill type systems. I suspect, or extensive systems. They're thinking of keeping their own replacements, and they're asking really what a reasonable percentage split would be between maternals and terminals. So, in other words, how many should be going to an A flock for maternals, and how many should be going to the terminals?
It depends on how many replacements you need and what you're trying to maintain. Yeah, yeah, if you've got 500 ewes and you want a 25% replacement rate, you're going to need 125 replacements, aren't you? So you need to be able to create those from your A flock. That's what you're wanting to do, the 125 females. So that's 250 lambs from that flock, isn't it? So
and I suppose, Kate, in that instance, you probably leave a little bit for wastage and selection as well, probably, wouldn't you?
Of course you would. Yeah. So yes.
So in that instance, probably looking for 300 lambs, and if it's low input flock, probably looking for 250 ewes going that way, I suppose, wouldn't it? Yeah, if it's a hill type system.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I think, Kate's approach there, which is actually working back to what your replacement rate needs to be, then working back from there, then in terms of the number of lambs that need to be on the ground and the ones that, and the number of ewes that need tucking. So
exactly, working it back that way.
Yeah, we always recommend people that they actually, well, our customers anyway, that they put their young ewes, which is a bit of a bizarre one because I know that in pure breeding, you always use the new lines, the new sheep has the new genetic gain, the young generation. But commercially, we always advise people to use things like Primeras or any other easy lambing tup on those young ewes and actually only consider them for the maternal flock when they get to sort of 3-year-olds because they've proven themselves.
Yeah.
And it also keeps a bit more time, so you need less maternal rams because daughters take that a little bit longer to get to dad.
Yeah.
But I don't know, Kate, do you have flocks that are doing that or not?
Not particularly. An awful lot of the flocks I work with are commercial and not necessarily keeping their own replacements. Although quite a lot of Welsh farms that I deal with are keeping replacements. But yeah.
So Elizabeth on the call here is asking. This is the last question showing. So and we're getting towards 9 o'clock anyway. Do you have issues with mismothering when tagging lambs outside? And what age do you tag? Is that picking up on the fact that you were tagging lambs early, Chris, or not? Do you tag lambs outdoors or not?
We tag them. We tag them at birth, really. I'll sort of go around in the morning, and see what's lambed, and then at lunchtime I'll castrate and ear tag. We don't seem to get too much, really. You get the odd one which might be a bit scabby, occasionally, but generally speaking, we don't have a problem. We use all tags. No, we don't. You just got to make sure that you allow them enough space for the ear to grow. But yeah, we don't generally get any problems really with that.
Okay. And Kate, I don't know if you want to come in on that in terms you'll have plenty of flocks that are tagging at birth, lots of clean
Yeah.
flocks, I assume, as well.
Yeah, a lot of people do. It is a potential wound for letting bacteria in. So it's always a concern, and people do relate it sometimes to joint ill cases and the like. But I think as long as you're being hygienic about applying tags and not doing it too early when the animals are wet, I think once their ears dry, and potentially, if you have had problems with tagging in the past and disease issues, maybe sterilizing treating the tags. There's been a sort of quite a good study Fiona Lubbock done on that new it was really for navel dressing rather than iodine, but a product that's been developed based on ions, metal ions. I think it's called Nobax, but that's been shown to reduce or improve lamb survivability in the first 4 days of life. So that seems to be something that people are using a bit more on tags and in navels as well, and seems to be helping with avoiding disease issues.
Yeah, we don't really have a huge problem with joint ill, really, and because we're a closed flock, possibly I don't know. We don't really have a huge issue with it. Touch wood. I know some people that do have big problems with it, but tend not to. So, like you say, as we're hygienists, keep our tags in a bag. We're fairly conscious that we keep them clean. We haven't had a problem.
Yeah, good. It's one of those problems, isn't it, joint ill, that I've seen it on really brilliantly managed farms in fantastic sheds with clean straw everywhere, and they still get a joint ill problem. And you just think, it is there, and it is in carrier ewes as a joint ill bug, Strep discalactii. So it is one of those things that if you've got it on the farm, unfortunately, you will have to do something about it. But good hygiene, clean bedding, all of those things will really help if you're indoors. Outdoors, it's never as much of a problem, Chris. So I think lambing outdoors, you reduce the risks of all of those types of problems that you would in a shed. So much better outdoors.
Yeah. There was a question there in terms as well of if you see any mismothering, but again, I'm taking it, Chris, that you're getting into those ewes and lambs in the right time before things are too flighty, so you're not running over different groups. And I think that seems to be the secret in terms of not mismothering at that stage, isn't it? Is getting to those couples or those pairs in the right time that you're not causing too much problem. So it's a timing issue. I don't know if you want to add anything, Chris or Kate, on that.
Go on, Chris. I would totally agree with you, Dowie. Don't disturb them too soon, otherwise you will get mismothering. Let them mother up properly and have a good drink of colostrum, and then follow in after that, making sure they're not too disturbed by you and anything else going on around on the farm as well.
Yeah.
I find it works quite well, really, because you can go and pick your lamb up, make sure it's full, castrate, ear tag, away it goes again, and that's it.
Yeah.
Again then, and then they can get on with it. But it's a good thing to check your lamb.
Yeah. And I think in terms of intervention, trying to keep
your lamb, make sure they're full and away.
Yeah. And from tagging lots of lambs at birth, over the years, we always found, I think, if you can actually keep the ewes focused to you with the lamb, so not letting it bugger off with one. And quite often, if you've already done one lamb, that little piece of string through his back legs and over his head, and just having there where she's mothering him on the ground while you're doing the other lamb just saves them disappearing away, just to keep everything together, doesn't it? So
absolutely, yeah.
Common sense. There we go. Look, I think we've answered hopefully all the questions that have been asked. There's nothing else there, I think, as far as I can see. So very, very grateful to you both. Kate, as always, a wealth of knowledge, giving us a really good run through. Not easy when you're on a screen, not seeing your audience, but
yes, it is weird.
Yeah, but you kept everybody with you, because the number of the people that came on the call are still on the call. So that's always a very good sign. So when you see people dropping off, then you know something's not right. Yours are all there, so that's really good. And then Chris, really good to hear your story in terms of what a phenomenal, I love the fact that you say, you've developed the meat business so that you can keep farming, with your 100 acres and your 500 ewes. And isn't that a great story for anybody in the future?
Brilliant.
Despite the fact that, that you're putting a huge amount of work and effort into it, but you really are doing a very good job. It's very, very impressive. And if we were closer, we'd be buying lamb off you tomorrow.
We would.
We could actually get a cent, can we, really? So,
We could.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
Do mail order.
Yeah. But anyway, thank you ever so much, both of you, for giving us your time. Thanks everybody else for coming on. We've got one more webinar, winter webinar left, which is a fortnight tonight, where we'll have Piers Davis going into the real depths of disease and how to avoid it, how to look for it, all sorts of practical advice, how to do postmortems, all sorts of stuff. So if people are genuinely interested in understanding how you're going to get on top of your flock health, understand what you're seeing in front of you, making value out of a dead sheep, because it's about the only value you can get is to actually post-mortem and actually get some real sensible information back, then join us a fortnight from tonight. And on that, we'll call it quits. Thank you all very much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Good night, Zoe.
Good night, all.
Chris.
Thank you. Cheers.